Hi, this is Tim Martin, and this is my the overview of my Nehemiah organizational development analysis paper. So, really quickly to overview what's happening in the story of Nehemiah. Nehemiah is charged with rebuilding the wall of Jerusalem, and he's attempting to achieve alignment with the Jewish people in their walk with God and their identity with God. And so, his desired future state is a rebuilt Jerusalem and a people that are renewed in their relationship with the Lord. So, in order to do this, he travels to Jerusalem, he rebuilds the wall, he's established as governor of Jerusalem. And ultimately, what we see while he's there is that the people come back to God and they do achieve alignment with him, and their relationship with God is seemingly restored. However, after 12 years, Nehemiah takes an exit from the city and then comes back to find that the people have gone right back to their old ways. So what's the big picture? Nehemiah effectively, what the story is portraying is that Nehemiah effectively achieves change and alignment while he's present, but he loses the alignment and the results of his change once he's away. So we see that the change is pushed back, so to speak, when Nehemiah leaves. So why the pushback? And this kind of gets to the thesis statement of my paper, is that Nehemiah, throughout the story, what we see is that the Jewish people achieve alignment while he's there, and this is because many of his actions and his abilities are congruent with the sound organizational development principles that we've learned through this course. However, Nehemiah fails to establish sustainable practices for when he leaves to be able to carry on the nature of the change. And one of the reasons for this is that I think that there's a blurring between the roles of Nehemiah as a change agent and a change champion, and we'll get to that in a little bit. So some of the core theories and methods and practices that we see in the story of Nehemiah is this concept called action research. Now, it's not necessarily exactly action research, but what we see is that Nehemiah conducts a form of ground level research of the people and uses that information to take action and navigate this change and the project of rebuilding the wall as it goes through. A couple ideas that are important out of the systems theory model that we see in the text is that there is consistent feedback for Nehemiah. This comes from both internal and external sources. So internally, he's reading the workers and he's also conversing with them and developing relationships with them, all the way to understanding that they're being exploited by the nobles, and then taking action on that. And even from external sources, when some of the countries around him are seeking to come and destroy Jerusalem and destroy the work that he's doing on the wall. So he's really using feedback from both internal and external sources. And he's also identified this need to change for the people of Jerusalem. This is a key part of the systems theory, is that if there is no change, if a company does not change as it moves forward, in the future, it will end up eventually becoming obsolete. And then you see this consistent data collection, analysis, and feedback. Again, going back to when he was helping the poor, he collects information from them about what's going on, and then he uses that for action. So we see also in the story of Nehemiah the complete organizational development process from startup all the way to the transition phase. So the startup phase is characterized by pre-entry, entry, and contracting. We see the pre-entry when he's prepping and praying to go meet with King Artaxerxes. The entry when he actually meets with the king to describe his work and describe the desired outcome that he hopes to achieve. And then he ends up entering into a verbal contract with the king. And then there's the diagnosis phase, which is actually an ongoing phase for Nehemiah. You see him diagnosing this even before he goes to Jerusalem. He's hearing what's going on, and he's developing what needs to happen throughout this. Then the intervention, when he goes to Jerusalem, sees the actual damage, and then starts designing his plans on how to build the wall, and ultimately builds the wall. Finally, there's the transition phase, which is characterized by continued follow-up all the way to the completion of the project. And you see this all the way throughout. Nehemiah is consistently following up the project, making sure that the project gets completed, and also making sure that none of these internal or external sources of resistance are actually going to slow down the project. Importantly, one of the ways that Nehemiah is very effective in his method, while he's there at least, is that he addresses the three different levels of the organization of Jerusalem, uh, when he's going in there to make the change. So the first level of the organization that he is reaching is King Artaxerxes, by achieving alignment and buy-in and his sponsorship in order to do the work. Then you see him working with middle management, people that are overseeing the walls. He's even assigning roles to those who are building the wall. And then you also see him working with ground level employees, which I've discussed a little about before. But importantly, what this achieves while he's there is credibility. He is a credible leader. He has the backing of the king. He has authority. He has the backing of the king, who has given him the authority to actually perform the task. He has alignment from the king, alignment from the people, builds trust in the people, and also builds a structure of leadership while he's there. One of the big overarching themes that we see in Nehemiah is this idea of achieving a social change. And so what Nehemiah is really attempting to do here is to change the construct of the Jewish people's culture. What's happened is that they've walked away from the Lord. They have turned their backs seemingly, and they've been engaging in activities that are not congruent with who they are in the Lord. And so his desired social change is a united people showing power, God's power, to the other nations through the state of Jerusalem, or through the people of the Jewish people. And he also wants an obedient, God-centered people. So he's in order to do this, he needs to develop shared vision, values, and plans. And he does this throughout the story of Nehemiah. He's developing a shared mission in the build of the wall, having the people come together for this collective idea that the wall needs to stand, that the city of Jerusalem needs to stand. And then you see actions that are taken, or that Nehemiah takes. In this case, Ezra is the one who reads the law of Moses to the people, but this is clearly sanctioned by Nehemiah in a way that will achieve this alignment with the people, not only in their vision, but also in their vision of the city, but also in their vision of God. So we see that he's helping to develop an obedience to God. He's also addressing power dynamics as he goes through there to achieve this social change by stopping the nobles from taking advantage of their own people. And then finally, he's mobilizing the people and getting them to follow and act and make this change while he's there. So some of the OD applications and practices, I'm going to make this in two sections. We got the pros and the cons. So part of Nehemiah's success is that he has been very effective, again, in achieving the alignment we talked about. But he also addresses a lot of the social injustices as he's there. He's building trust with the people. He's increasing their morale. And he's managing resistance in a couple key ways. Now, according to the text, we've got two key ways of managing resistance are through credible leadership and assigning meaningful roles. And so what we see is that he has developed credible leadership through his backing, his sponsorship of King Artaxerxes. He has clear authority, and he's able to carry out his plan in a way that the people follow. And then what we see is that he assigns meaningful roles throughout for people to actually, really engage and be a part of this solution that he's developed. And then there's the cons, and I'd say this is Nehemiah's failure, and ultimately the reason that when he leaves, he's not able to sustain the change. He doesn't have a sustainable model for keeping the change in place after he leaves. And I think this is a result of Nehemiah being a change champion as opposed to a change agent. So he has effectively been more of the person that is telling the people what to do rather than building up the structure to be able to maintain the change. And you see this when he leaves, very quickly the people go back to their old ways. And this is going to be likely a result of a lack of effectively appointed and trained leadership, people that are not necessarily aligned in in their views, and his inability to actually create that without him being there. So he's unable to reproduce the change without his physical presence. So then this idea of Nehemiah as a change agent or a change champion. Throughout the story of Nehemiah, you see that he really, it sounds like he begins as a change agent. He's working with the people. He's really more of that social figure that's able to come in there and really bind the people together and help them through this change process. But what I think that we see at near the end of the story is that maybe he wasn't as great of a change agent as he was a change champion. So more the person that's telling people what to do, that his presence is really giving people all of the guidance that they need. And without his presence, maybe there's not enough of it. So when he leaves Jerusalem, I think that we see he has the change goes really to the wayside, and the people go right back to who they were, because Nehemiah did not set up sustainable practices, sustainable leadership, and likely wasn't really a great change agent as much as he was the change champion. So he was ineffective at producing lasting change. So in conclusion, I think Nehemiah is an excellent change champion. We see that 12 years that he's there, the city of Jerusalem is together and aligned and following God and consistently in the word and in the law of Moses and doing exactly what they're called to do. But he struggles as a change agent. He fails to implement repeatable and sustainable practices for change. He underutilizes the delegation of power, and he has difficulty with his emotional awareness. In the end of Nehemiah, you see him come back and just lose his mind and start essentially beating the people who were doing the wrong thing or who went back to their old ways. And I think this is an example that he may have had an issue with this. So in conclusion, I would say he did a very good job for during the time that he was in. It's not bad for 2,500 years ago, but I think there's a lot that we can learn from not only his successes, but also his failures. So that is the paper in a nutshell, and thank you so much for your time.